Hello, my squishies! How are we all doing today? I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join us. But for those of you who haven't joined us before, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to needle felting while everybody is joining in. If somebody could say hello in the comments so that I know I'm actually here and being heard, that would be amazing. But if for those of you who haven't needle felted before, we're going to do a quick introduction. So in your kit, you should have everything that you need to make the picture up here. I see comments, we are live. So in your kit, you've got a foam mat. It's always a really good idea to felt onto the foam mat to protect your surfaces and make it easier for felting. We've got a bit of pre-felt, so this is what we're going to be felting onto, and there should be a basic outline of what we're going to do on the felt. We've got our frame to put it on the wall. We've got a couple of special things that are just for felting. So we've got our needles. So these are sharp, thank you, these are sharp barbed needles that we use to felt with. It's always a really good idea to count them in and out so that you don't lose any. If they do break, which can happen, just find the broken bits and dispose of it securely. It's also not a good idea to stab yourselves with these because it is a little bit painful. So I tend to have, I say this now, but I'm going to stab myself, one hand away from where I'm felting. To make it easier to hold the needles, I've also included I'm reading, you might not be able to see the comments after this is live, but I'll discuss it later. They are, aren't they, Morgan? We've also got a needle grip. So this makes it easier to hold the needle. And I'll show you how to use this because there is a trick to it. So you've got a little plug in one end and you just pull that out. You'll see a wee groove along the edge there. You just place that in the groove and you're putting it back in with the small end going into the holder. You just press that in gently. I will do that again. So you take the little plug out, you grab a needle, pop it in and pop the small end back into the holder. Now you don't have to use this. A lot of people find it a lot easier to use it, so I've included it in the kit. You get ones that have 3 or 6 in them as well. I tend to just hold my needles as I go because I'm always switching between using one needle, 2 or 3 depending on what I'm doing at the time. And my mind just went blank. Yes, no. When you're felting, it's really important and it'll cut down breakages if you always felt straight down. Never bend the needle as you're stabbing in. So you can go straight, you can go horizontal, but never bend as you're going because you're a lot more likely to break your needles then. So that's the needles, needle holder. We've got our one last thing, most important thing is our fibre. So there's a couple of tricks to working with fibre. So this has come off the sheep, it's been washed, it's been dyed, it's been brushed into what we call a tops or roving. Now when we're felting, we're just going to use tiny amounts. So to pull out tiny amounts, hi Jennifer, the trick is to, if you have your hands too close together, you're pulling on both ends of the same hair, so it's not going to pull. So you want to have your hands nice and far apart and just gently pull out little bits. And if there's any twist in it, it's not going to pull out either, because twist is what makes yarn basically. So if there's any twist in the roving, you're not going to be able to pull it out. This isn't so much of an issue with just a small amount. Yep, so have your hands nice and far apart and we're working with just tiny amounts because you'd be amazed the difference a little makes. So that is a brief introduction to felting. I think everybody who should be here tonight has joined us. Hello everybody. shall we felt some sheep? I think that sounds like fun. So to start with, as usual, because this is me, I'm going to work from the back to the front, although we're going to do a little bit of jumping about. But I tend to do stuff behind it so you can lay on. So you do the sky first and lay the hills on top, so it'll give it a nice clean edge. And these sheep, so the sheep in my logo is called Frank, so I'm probably going to refer to these sheep as Frank and Friends for this, so just to warn you of that. But we're going to start with the sky blue, and we're just going to lay down a little bit of blue, just roughly in line where the sky should be. Now it's always a really good idea to go over the edge, because when we put this frame on, we don't want to see any gaps. So I'm just going to lay it down and just quickly stab in. And so if this is your first time here, I know the old pros that are watching right now will be fine, but if this is your first time, we're going to gently felt everything first. We're not going to go too heavy, so I'm going to move fairly quickly with the colours because they don't need to be properly fixed in yet. We're basically blocking out the colours and then we'll go in afterwards to felt everything in properly, make any adjustments that we want to make. Because the wonderful thing about felting, and as we all know, is that especially just now, it's only really lightly felted in. So if I want to change something, I can super easily pull it off and put it into a different place. So that's, you've got a lot of freedom just now, so you can't really make a mistake at the moment. And to be honest, you can't make a mistake throughout the whole thing because this is your artistic interpretation of what I'm doing, so everything you do is perfect. So let's get that blue sky in just a little bit. I'm happy with that. I'm going to pop in a couple of clouds just super loosely. So the clouds are going to be in the white. So just pop in just some nice thin clouds. I probably will move these later on. But I just want to give the general outline. So like if we were painting, we would be filling in colour blocking, I think is probably the term. So we've got the sky down, and if anybody's doing it live with me, if I'm going too fast, give me a shout. We're now going to work on this hill. So this hill is going to start off, we're going to go with we've got 3 greens, we've got a light, we've got a sort of foresty grassy green, and then we've got this slightly darker green. I don't know if you can see it because so we've got the 3 greens there. So we're going to start with this one, and again we're colour blocking just now, so I'm just taking a thin amount and I'm going to lay it at the top of this hill, and in this area, to give myself some wiggle room for when we actually finish up the design, I'm going to go quite far over the edges so I can decide the perfect layout at the end. So I'm just going to lay down a base layer of this green, but there will be colours going on top, so it doesn't need to be too thick. It's really fun building up the colour layers. And just a little bit further down, and then we're going to switch on to the darker, so we're going to switch on to the darker foresty green. And that's going along this edge. So this is the edge where the hill in the background is behind the hill in the foreground, so we want to really make it pop. So I'm going darker in this area. I'm going to even just now, before we go too much further, put in a tiny, and when I say tiny, I'm going to say there's a lot tonight, tiny amount of the dark brown black just on that edge, because this is going to, we're going to go over it with other colours, but it's going to give a depth and a shadow. So even if you don't necessarily see it in the final piece, it will be there and it will be making a difference. But we are going to go over it, so don't worry if it looks scary and blocky just now. Don't panic. Because we go through this every time. It looks like a mess, it looks like a mess, and then suddenly you put in just that one little pop of colour and it's perfect. So I'm going to put in a bit more of this green, and I'm even now going to start putting this green over that black. Now my laptop is behind me today, so every so often I'm going to have to turn around to A, check your comments and say hello, but B, check that I'm still in frame. There we go, so we've got that. So it, at the moment, looks like it is quite a harsh line between the two, but it will blend out, so don't worry. I might even pop a tiny bit of green just going over it, and that'll blend it out a little bit. There we go, and it's even then, just that little bit of green on top gives it a nice fade. And now this big bit of hill again, we're going to be fading from the lightest green, but this time we're fading down to the lovely grass green that our cute, that Frank and his friends are munching away on in the summer sun. Is that awfully romantic of me? So generally when I'm laying down the felt, I tend to lay it down flat like that, so it's all in line. But you don't have to do this, and there are certain bits later on where we're going to change it up and scrumple it before I put it down, because the different ways you lay it down will give different effects in the end. So for this up here, I am going to follow the line of the hill to a certain extent to give a nice smooth edge to that hill there. And I'm still going to go over quite a bit over the line. Just quickly felt that down. You can see it's really fluffy just now, don't worry about that. Oh, and now is a very good point. Oh, I'm going to again. It's a very good point. So we've done a little bit of felting. It's always a good idea to pull the fabric away from the mat, because it will start to stick to it. So you can see the fibres there are starting to stick into the mat. So every sort of 5 or 10 minutes, just pull it off, and at this point you can even move it about a wee bit, give it a wee pat down and see how it's looking, and those needle marks will start to disappear as well. But you can see on the back how it's all felting through and in there. Okay, so we've got the green. I'm going to pull the green down a little bit further because we don't want any. So again, I'm laying it down so I've got a nice smooth edge there, though I will probably at points pull it up a little bit and put some more black underneath. There we go. So that's good there. We've got that nice base there, and now we're going to fill in this foreground bit with the lighter green. Now these hills, sorry, not lighter green, the grass green. These hills can be any hills that you want them to be, but I was slightly influenced, Morgan, by a suggestion to do, and now I'm going to pronounce it terribly, Lair Gur. I'm so sorry. Which is a somebody's going to tell me how to pronounce it in the comments. Which is a pass in the Cairngorms where two hills come down like that. But these hills can be any hills you want them to be. And if you've got a specific hill shape that you like, you can even wiggle the shape up here and it will be your hill. So again, I'm just blocking in colours just now, so it's not going to look. Larry Grew is the hill. Excellent, that sounds a lot better than my attempted pronunciation. Oh dear, I am so sorry. There we go, so I've left a lighter line at the moment. I may take this back later. I've left a lighter line there to highlight that edge. So there's a wee gap between the black and the grass green that is still the lighter colour. There we go. So we've got our basic colour blocking. And I'm going to make sure I put this green a little bit further down. Just in case I want to change the layout at all. But now let's start putting in some more. We're going to leave the sheep till close to the end. We're going to start putting in more colours and highlights and shadows into these hills now that we've got the basic colours down. So at the tops of the hills, we're going to overlay with some browns and then grey on top of that. So we've got the chocolate brown. So we're going to take just now, I'm going to say this many times, tiny amounts to start with. Just start laying that on. So you can put it on flat, or at this stage it's quite fun to scrumple it up a little bit, because that gives it sort of interesting pockets where the wool will be on top of each other, so there'll be darker bits and lighter bits. You can see how little I'm adding on, and I'm fanning it out like that. Can you even see it? I don't know if you can even see how little, that much at the moment I'm adding in, but it does make such a difference on the picture. Go. So we've got some browns. I'm going to take the browns right up to the top on this side and the other hill as well. Look at that brown mottledy patch there. There we go. While I'm popping in these browns, I'm just going to circle back to the comment about my mum's shawl pins. Oh my god, they are beautiful. I put a post on Instagram today with them paired with different coloured wools. They're absolutely stunning. So go check them out on my Instagram. Thanks, Mum. Okay, so we've got a little, I'm going to go with a little bit more brown. Let's be bold with the brown, because that's going to give it a nice depth. Because the grey on top is going to be all the rocks. Because at the top of the hill you tend to sort of fades up into rocks a lot of the time, rather than grass, especially on the taller hills. That'll give this a nice sense of depth. I can't speak anymore tonight. It's been a long week. There you go. So again, just tiny amounts of grey. And don't worry just now if you can see needle marks and it looks all puffy. We are going to go over it quite a lot with the needles to felt it in, and it'll slowly compact down, and then I find if you've been doing it for a while and staring at it for a while and you're not happy with it, a good going over the whole area can just make all the difference. There we go, so we've got the greys. I'm going to get the greys going right up to the edge of the skyline there. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm proud of my mum. She's amazing. Okay, so we've worked a little bit on these greys. We're not going to fix on any one area too much just now. I want to sort of dot about and put colours in and build it up rather than get fixed on a specific area. So I'm going to start working on this fade from the green and the brown. Now we are going to put a path on at the end, but that's not going to be till the end. So I'm going to put a tiny amount of the grass green in there. Not too much, but that's just going to give it some little highlights. And again, just depth of colour is always so important in making it seem interesting and lifelike. Well, not lifelike, it doesn't have to be lifelike, this is your own imagination, but interesting and fun. Because even that little, you can't see it quite as well on camera as I can here. But that little green has made loads of difference. I'm going to pop in a bit of this green lower down on top as well. I'm going to scrumple it this time, I think. There we go. So you see when you can see now when I've scrumpled it, and that gives no, I really can't speak tonight. That gives little highlights. How do I make it this far? It gives little highlights as if the sun is just hitting tops of little knolls or erratics that are there. Because this would have been, if this is Larry Grew, I believe that's probably glacier carved. So it would have been an ancient glacier that then went through this and would have left little deposits of little rocks everywhere, and you'd see these wonderful lumpy stony bits. That is one of my favourite landscapes, is with erratics everywhere. I'm popping in a little bit of blue because I spotted a hole up there, so I'm just going to pop a scrumple that and pop that there. There we go. So I'm really liking how this is coming out. And that, I'm enjoying that. I think I want to tone it down a little bit, but not too much yet until we've pulled out the colour in here. But can you see the difference now with the tiny amounts that you've popped on here compared to here? It is all these little bits that just makes a difference. So in this area here, I will start popping the sheep in soon, but I'm going to add, I think, a bit more of the lighter green, fading it down there. I'm going to add a bit of brown, I think, further down. Because as I discovered the other day, these wonderful sheep, Frank and his friends, need a little bit of shadow underneath them to make them seem like they're in the landscape. So we don't want too much them sitting on the grass green in the distance, or else the shadows are lost. I am going to, however, as I've just said that, going to now put a little patch of lighter green up there, as if there's a little ledge or a little interesting bit. So layering up is basically what we're doing now. Putting the light green on top of the dark green on top of the light green, and it just blends it in really nicely. Even going to pop in a little bit of brown. Now if you have felted before, or if you have any wool lying around, any tops lying around, and you want to put in flowers and heather and things, you can pop in little bits of purple. I think, although this is the time of year for purple, I think this might have been set a couple of months ago, just before the sheep got shorn. Let's pop in some of this dark green into here, though not too much, because we're going to try and reserve this for their shadow, but I think I want a little bit, just giving it. That's too much. Before I even felt it down, I can see. There we go. Maybe in the distance more than up front. Nope. Scrap that. Pretend I didn't say that. I take it all back. So you can see at this stage I can still pull it up and move it around. Especially, I'll remember and do that now. There we go. How is that looking? Am I squinty again? I am. So I feel like this is starting to come together. Let's have a quick look in the frame. So we're going to decide now where we're putting our sheepsies, putting Frank and his friends. So I'm just going to lay this on top just now and decide. So I'm definitely going to move this cloud. It's too big and too much there. But I'm liking that arrangement, and so we'll have our little flock, I think more to this side and then going up. Now your sheep can be any size you want and any amount of sheep you want. The ones at the front, so nearer the bottom, we're going to make bigger, and then they're going to go smaller the further away they are. And I'm only putting heads, this sounds bad, I'm only putting heads on the closest ones. The further away ones don't have heads. You can put heads in the further away ones if you want, but I don't know. I haven't, because it gives it a sense. No, I genuinely can't speak today. A sense of depth. But let's have a look. Yeah, I'm gonna move this cloud right now, and then I'm gonna start popping some sheep in. There we go. So it's a lighter cloud, but your clouds can be heavier or lighter. Also going to pop a little bit up there. There you go. So I'm going to go over this whole area quickly for about a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to start popping sheep in. And once the sheep are in, we can still do stuff with the grass and things, but I want it to be semi-felted just now. Now, if you're not happy with the way it's looking just now, before you go much further, there are a couple of things I'm going to get you to try and do to see if you're not happy because you've stared at it too long, or what you might need to change. So it's always a really good idea to step away from what you're doing and look at it from a different angle. Hold it upside down, put it across the other side of the room, go make a cup of tea, come back and have another look at it. Holding it upside down is a good one, because then you can spot what you might need worked on from a unbiased perspective. Or what I like to do is photograph it and have a look at the photograph, because that'll change the way you look at it as well. Or what I like to do is photograph it and send the photograph to Mum, and she tells me exactly what I need to change. But it's the act of photographing it, and you might suddenly go, actually I really like this, or that transition between that hill and that hill's not quite what I want it to be. But don't worry too much right now, because once the sheep come in, I keep getting a wee hole there. Once the sheep come in, it will make a big difference. This is still too dark, so I'm going to go over this now that I'm looking at it, because I'm looking at this in the computer screen, which gives me a different perspective on it whenever I turn around. So I'm going to cover over that with the green a little bit more. Might even pop a tiny bit of lightest green in there. What do we think? Just to give it a little bit of shadow. And don't worry about going over it and over it, unless it starts to build up really thickly. There we go. That's better. That's just taking the edge off it. You can still see the depth of colour behind it. It's just not quite as stark as it was. So I don't know if you probably can't see it quite on the screen, but the little thin layer of the lightest green I put in between the two darker greens is just popping through in tiny places, which just gives little highlights. I'm going to work on the top of these hills in a little bit as well, but I think we should be brave and start chucking some sheep in, because the sheep placement I'm probably going to shift about 3 or 4 times, so that's totally fine. But now we're going to take the sheep are just little white blobs with little black heads. Your sheep can be any colour you want. I would say the white ones stand out best, but if you want to do brown sheep or brown and white sheep, you can always try. And you can always take it out if you don't like it. So I'm going to start, I think, with the bottom sheep, place them, and then work my way up. So I'm starting, it is a tiny, tiny amount, rolled up. I'm just scrumpling into a ball, so you can get a sort of size gauge of what size your sheep are going to be. And then I'm going to plonk it. And to start off with, I'm, what's that, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 stabs in, just to hold it in place, so that if I do want to shift it, it's super easy to take it away. And once we've got all of the placement in, is when we're going to properly, I say properly, even in the final one I've not felted them down amazingly, because I want them to still be quite 3D. So we're going to put in another sheepsies. Now I try and do uneven numbers, because it tends, in nature you tend to get uneven numbers. And I'm trying not to have them, I'm trying to be random. It's really hard to be random though. So these front 3. So while you're playing with your sheep, I'm going to do a couple of different, so we could have them this size, which is roughly the size that I did before. Or I want to try, I'll put these aside, put my sheep aside for safety, to do a big one, just to give you guys options. So you could do a big old sheep at the front. I might keep it like this. Ooh. And then getting smaller. This is the fun bit. This is the so you've blocked it in, and now it's just literally playing. Again, you can see how unfelted in that is just now. Oh, I like it with that big one, I think. So this is version 2. Version 1 that I've already done is up here, and you can copy that sheep pattern if you like. But for this one, I'm going to do a second version with a bigger difference in the sheep size. I might regret this and change it all back at the end, but for just now, I like that 3 pattern with the biggest about half and then about half again. So the biggest one is about the size of my thumb knuckle, then pinky knuckle, and then tiny dot. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense, depending on your thumb size. But again, I want it to be more than just the 3. So I'm going to put a couple of smaller ones up away in the back. You can see the tiny amount. Again, can you even see it? Yeah. Tiny amount up there. So I want, how many? We've got 6, 7, maybe one last one there. And then I think I might like that layout. I know it's different from the other one, but yours is going to be different from mine anyway, depending on how many sheep you want. I'm going to do another medium sized. Yeah, I quite like that layout, because this guy's nice and fluffy in the foreground. Cool, right. Let's do a little bit of texturing around them and give them some heads, might be a good idea. And it depends, so they can look either way. They can have their heads up or they can have their heads down because they're eating. So you've got a few options, but the head's going to be a lot smaller. So this is dark, the black, this isn't going to help, but you want to make the head in proportion to the body. So for the bigger one at the front, he's got a slightly bigger head. If you want to put eyes and stuff on, you can, she says hesitantly. It will be slightly harder. I'm probably not going to try and put eyes on because I like simplicity of this one. I think is going to face this way. So that's a smaller head than the one there. Again, these are still fluffy and not worked in properly because I'm still deciding on layouts and things. Now this is, yeah, that could be fine. Might move him down a wee bit and then pop him up there. No, I like him over there. Or her, them. That's better. That gives it that nice sense of depth. And this is, I think, the last one I'm going to put a head onto. So how are we all doing? Is anybody up to their sheep? Okay, we have semi-sheep. I'm going to fill him in a wee bit. So all these fluffy bits now, I'm just sort of gently going around the edge and tidying them in, if that makes sense. So just kind of encouraging them to be where I want them to be. Now if you do your sheep too small, or if you do the faces too small, what can happen is you sometimes poke when you're felting it. It just goes right the way through and disappears. If that happens, it happens. Just put another one on top. It's gone. His head's a bit. And if there's tiny bits of the wrong colour, you can go down and pick them out. There we go. So now these sheep at the moment kind of seem to be floating, not really embedded in the landscape. So the trick to that is we're going to do shadows. And now the shadow's not going to be the dark brown. It's going to be the darkest green for the shadows. So you're going to grab a tiny amount for each sheep. And I'm just taking it, I'm kind of folding it, if that makes sense. Popping it underneath the sheep. And it doesn't have to be exact. So in theory, the light source, if it's hitting the edge of that hill, the light source doesn't essentially matter. You could have them, if you want this to be a darker, like an evening scene, you can make longer shadows, all going in the same direction. I'll do a wee example of that. So you could have longer shadows like that, kind of reflecting the shape of the sheep, and have them all having that long shadow, and that would look like the sun is setting. But just now I want it to be nice and daylight, so I'm just having a wee shadow right underneath each one, and that's just gonna pop. We are going to put in more mottledy colours as well around this area, because this area is a bit flat at the moment, but for just now I want to get the wee shadows in. You can see the immediate difference. I'm even going to do tiny ones under those ones as well. Ooh, that guy's shadow is not quite big enough. And his butt sticking out in the air. So just tiny, again, this tiny amount that I'm using is insane to use to make the wee shadows. But you can move it around, and it doesn't have to be absolutely precise, because we're going to put in a couple, like here I'm going to put in that darker green just to give it, I've said this so many times tonight, give it depth. Okay. I've shut up because I'm concentrating quite hard on this. Getting the shadows is the hardest part, because it's the one bit I have to be semi-precise. I've gone under each of them, and now you can, it just suddenly starts to pop, which feels really nice. And don't worry if the shadows get lost under one, just again pop more. So let's have a quick lift it up, have a scooch, and doing this helps if you've got lots of needle marks, kind of helps to smooth it out. That's going to be down there, that's going to be there. Yeah, I'm happy with that layout. Do I want another one? Or another one there? No, I'm going to leave it like this. But you're free to put your sheep wherever you like. I've noticed a wee gap there, so I'm just going to take a little bit more of the dark green. So if I'm just putting in a little gap and I wanted to have a straight edge, I've taken a little bit, folded it over my finger, and I'm just going to use that fold to make a nice neat edge that fits into there. There we go. That's better. Right, I'm going to put in a bit more texture into here, but this one's coming along fairly quickly today. So I'm going to pop some darker colours. So, words. To put in just little amounts. I've pulled out a wee bit, and then I'm fanning it open and laying it down so that you don't get a sort of solid line of colour, but you get just little dark and light pops. This needs a bit more grass because now I realise I give you the frames in the kit to mount it in the frame, but if you do like it as a flat picture better, you can mount it in oh, well done, Mum. I've just been reminded I haven't put the path in yet. Yes, I will get to the path in a second. Thank you. Yeah, you see, you can mount it in a square frame if you like, so you could fill in square. I just really like the round frames and the circularness of it. That's totally a word. Okay, so let's, before we go any further, get this path in, and I'm going to work on the tops here again a little bit further. So the path is in the grey, and to do the path you grab a really thin bit. So I'm sort of pulling it out so it's thin and long like that, and I'm going to twist one end a little bit so that it tightens up a little bit, and starting from the top, so I'm joining up into the gravel at the top. I'm going to first zigzag, gently pressing it down one way, then I'm going to take it the other way. And you can have a couple of goes at your path, and your path can be different. So as it's going down, I'm letting it get a little bit thicker, or if there's like a corner bit, it can be a little bit thicker in the corner, and if you run out before you get to the end, you can just add in a wee bit more. I think I'm just going to make it, but yeah, as it goes down it goes thicker. And I tend to always do a zigzag because hill paths tend to be zigzagged because nobody wants to go straight up the middle. And just make sure it stops before there. I like that zigzag. So your zigzag can be any zigzag. If you have a specific path that you like, you can copy that zigzag. But you want it to be quite thin. And if it kind of disappears at points, that's okay, because paths might disappear. I think I want that to be a bit more zigzaggy. I might even put in another zig. Now I'm just muttering to myself. I might even put in another zigzag because that felt a bit too steep at the bottom. So I'll grab another wee bit. Pop that in there. I don't tend to cut when I am needle felting. You can if you like. I'm just deciding if I want to move I think I want to move the path a bit that way. See, just now, wonderful thing about needle felting, you can just shift it and have it going more an angle there. We also need to double check that's going to fit in No, I want to move it that way a little bit. This is harder than putting the sheep in. So you should have a lot of this grey for this exact reason. So I want to move it a little bit further that way. But you can put your path wherever you like. And going at any angles you like. Yeah, that's better. I have that going quite far along and then out. Ooh, I like that. Yep, that's much better. There we go. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So you can, I'm going to put a little bit more brown around that top area. And a little bit more grey in as well. Whether I even see that or not. Yeah, I do see it. There we go. So hopefully yours is coming along as well. If there's any area like here is quite a solid samey green, so I'm going to pop in little bits of brown just to give it some. This little bit is stressing me out as well. I'll deal with him. But just now we're only adding in tiny amounts. Excellent. Right. I'm going to have a good felt for a couple of minutes over this whole area. And then we're going to try framing it up. So this is not going to be finished. So what I'm going to do, and what I always recommend everybody to do, is to spend a little bit of time on it tonight, then put it away. Come back in a day or a week and have a look at it again. Go felt over it again, give it a good 10 minutes, 15 minutes of just stabbing all over. Then put it in the frame. I will show you how to put it in the frame before we finish, but I wouldn't recommend framing it up tonight. It's got a bit of brown in it. I'm going to come back tomorrow with fresh eyes and play with it a little bit, give it a good old felting all over you, so you'll see it as it starts to sort of felt in and take shape. So at the moment I am holding 3 together, but you can do this with just 1. So to hold the 3, I've got the edge over my thumb and I'm pressing down there, and that gives it a nice fast. This is a workout for the arms though. Fast felting all over. And you'll spot tomorrow, like just now the light is starting to fade in here, but you'll spot in the morning there'll be bits that you've missed. I can actually see it now. bits where you want to add more in. But hopefully you guys all have a lovely Highland landscape. Larry Grew, possible Larry Grew, with Frank and his friends. Frank is my sheepy mascot. I've just ordered. Oh, it's very exciting. A load of bags with Frank on them. I'm very excited about that. So you might, if you come into the shop, I have a little wool shop in the Highlands of Fort William. If you come into the shop, you can buy a Frank bag. Okay, I think I have gone over this. My arm is starting to hurt slightly. It's starting to escape. I think I'm going to actually pull some of the lighter green down before I spoke too soon. I was about to say I think I'm finished, but that's all lies. I'm going to pop in a little bit more of the lighter green. If you need to put the shadows back in again, if they're starting to disappear because you're putting colours on top, you can do that. There's no problem there. That's better. That bit just felt too solidly one colour for me. If that makes any sense. There we go. So there's patches of light and dark and brown and green. I might even put a little bit of dark green in that bit there. So don't be afraid to use all the greens in all the areas, because there will be shadows. There we go. So I'm putting the darkest green up into there to make a couple of shadows. Cool. Right, let's see this in a frame. Is this sheep slightly drunk? There we go. Let's see this in a frame. I realise I'm covering up everything. Right. So when you pull it off, if you've been like me and you've been felting for a while, without pulling off because I forgot, it might bulge in places, but you can easily just smoosh that down a bit. You can also change the angle slightly, and when you put it in the frame it'll get pulled slightly as well. So to pop it in the frame, I always move the mat away. Oops, sorry for the scraping. Oh, should have started from the beginning. So that'll be inside there. You just hold one end and unscrew to get it out. Pop the inside down, and then you can feel the edge. Let's do this straight. Feel the edge. Feel where you want it to be. Pop that on top. That's a little bit, oh, I do like that. So as I said earlier, you felted around extra so that we've got room to maneuver. So do I want him right down there with a little bit more sky? Or do I want him slightly higher up? Do I want him completely off center? Oh, I quite like that off center there. Let's try that. So you've got this area to play with to make your layout. Yeah, I like that slightly off center. That hill going, do I need to put another one in there? I might put another one in there. Wait, how many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I can't have 8, no. But this is the bit where you play for like half an hour trying to choose where it is. and like the grey is gone from the top of my hill there, so when I put it in the frame it's going to disappear, so I might go back in and put a bit more grey in there, but I'll decide that tomorrow. But for just now I'm going to show you how to pop it in the frame, and I'm going to call it a night. Yep, I think I'm good there. So once you've popped it in the frame, you just, I tighten back up this screw. And don't be afraid to do this a few times. You might need to go back in and add more colour onto it, or change where the stuff is. You might want to take away that sheep and move it up, or do whatever. Once it's nice and tight and it's sitting level, you can tighten it up until you can't screw it anymore. To make it a finished picture, all you have to do is chop off, take a pair of scissors and chop off this extra at the back there, and then you will have a finished Highland, a finished Highland landscape. Look at that. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go in tomorrow and put in a bit more grey there and a little bit more grey there, because I didn't go down quite far enough. But I like the, yeah. Let's take a final image with all the colours there. Just, you know, for the final parting bit. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I hope you guys are happy with what you've done. You've done amazingly, I'm sure. I can't wait to see them all. So the usual YouTube stuff, I would really appreciate it if you liked, subscribed, did all that jazz. I also have a Facebook group for these felt alongs, and I love it when you guys post your finished ones in the Facebook group. I'm looking forward to seeing them popping up in a couple of minutes. But yeah, thank you for joining me. Jennifer, you will love yours in about half an hour, I 100% bet. And I can't wait to see it. But yes, thank you for joining me on this felting journey tonight. We have a wonderful sheepy landscape. Oh, somebody mentioned to me, I know this is the very end and it's too late now, but you can watch this again, obviously, if you're getting stuck. But you can also watch it again on 2 or 3 times speed and then turn the volume off. So you can just watch what I'm doing, and you don't have to listen to my rambling at high speed, because nobody needs to hear that. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining me, and I will see you, if not before, next month. But you guys have done brilliantly. Happy felting, guys. Thank you, put my hands out. Thank you, my squishies.